Can AI help me learn Playwright with Java? I don't know how to use Playwright. I do know how to use Java, but I'm going to use free chat AI interfaces to teach me Playwright with Java, and I'm going to automate this simple button-based calculator application. I have Maven installed and I have Java installed. I'm going to use both of those in the chat. I'm going to start with Chat GPT. That's probably the most famous of all the online chat APIs. Let's start with a simple prompt. Create a Java Maven project using JUnit 5, which is a single test that uses Playwright to open testpages.eviltester.com in a Chrome browser. Let's see what it gives me. Now I'm just going to copy and paste this stuff into files. We're not using any kind of agentic or CLI based code generation that will create the project for us. So I'm going to do this by hand. But once I've created the POM file, I should be able to load that into IntelliJ and we should be able to get started properly from there. Okay, so I've already created a path on the system where I'm going to create this. So in my folder, I'm just going to create a terminal here. I'll copy the pom.xml from there and we'll do copy con pom.xml and paste that in. Paste anywhere and press Ctrl Z, and so we've got our pom.xml there. So I should be able to load that into IntelliJ now. If I start up IntelliJ and we'll create we'll just open it. I'll open the pom.xml. Open as project. And it should hopefully start downloading everything, resolving dependencies. So it's downloading this for me. So this command line can go away. Close this. Right, so now I'm going to be in the editor and I'm just going to start editing this code that it's given me. So we can have a look at the pom.xml. Seems syntactically valid. I don't know if these are the most up-to-date versions. Clearly there's more up-to-date version of Java, but it doesn't matter. But it looks like we've got Playwright. Is that the most up-to-date version of Playwright? I don't know. I'm not going to check just now. I'm just going to carry on with this. So what else did it generate? So we've got the pom.xml. We asked for a test as well. So we've got the directory structure, source test Java, com example, playwright.java. Okay, so we need to create a couple of folders. So let's create source. Great, let's create source test Java. That's what we want. So we've got source test Java. Then we want to add in the class, new class, Playwright test. Then if I paste in the information, it will tell us it's not in the right package. I'll do Alt Enter, move to package com.example. So now we've got the folder structure, source test Java, com example, Playwright test. So let's have a quick look at this. We've got our test. We're instantiating a bunch of objects that are going to be shared across the tests. We're creating a Playwright session, I guess, which is going to launch Chromium as non-headless. We've got before and afters. So before each, we're going to create a new browser context and a new page. Okay, so you create a new page, then in the page you call a navigate. The assertions assert true. Assertions, I guess, are coming in from JUnit. Yep. So we're just using the navigation section from there and check that the page title to lowercase contains test pages. I don't think that's right. I wonder why it thinks that. Okay, well then if I run this, hopefully this should fail. I'm not sure why I added that, but that's fine. Let's run this. See what happened. Okay, so it's going to download Chromium. Okay, I didn't expect that because I've already got Chrome installed. I was expecting it to just use the normal browser. Downloading Chromium headless shell. Okay, so Playwright is doing a little bit more than I expected. I've always thought Playwright was a framework, and this is starting to feel more like a framework because it's doing a lot more than I expected. And it's downloading Firefox as well. Okay, so it's downloading a bunch of stuff. Filling up my C drive with stuff. There's maybe a way to configure that. I don't know. Getting Firefox as well. Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, I guess one of the good things is it's downloading this for me automatically, and I'm not having to set it up. It's just downloading a little bit more than I expected. And good, we've got a whole bunch of failures. Failed to create driver. Couldn't invoke because Playwright test browser is null. All right, let's try running it again and seeing if all the downloads it did made a difference. We're doing WebKit now. Okay, maybe the downloads failed. All right. And then the assertion error. Okay, so it did run that time. I guess some of the downloads failed. So that's the assertion that we thought was going to fail. Assert true, because the page title, too lowercase, contains test pages, which it doesn't. The page title contains calculator. Oh, no, that's test pages. Web testing and automation practice application pages. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll amend this to go to the calculator. Hopefully, even if you don't know Java or anything, you could still do this because all I'm doing is changing some of the simple code. And let's check that it contains calculator. And we'll run that. And it failed. All right, let's change this from an assert true to assert equals. Then I'll get page title to lowercase and we'll compare it to, oh, no need. All right, so that's what it was. I've lowercased it, or I think that's what it was. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change this to an assert equals, because then if it fails, it will show me the difference. So if I just do an assert true, it basically just says, I was expecting true, but I got false. Now it's going to say, because I've said page title to lowercase, assert equals calculator, it's going to say expected calculator, but was calculator. All right, so let's use non-lowercase. So now we should have a working test here. So admittedly, I've used some existing JUnit and Java knowledge in order to get this test working and doing something similar that we want, but that's fine. So we've got a basic test. I could use this to start learning Playwright. In fact, let's do that now. Let's ask ChatGPT, because we've got it up, what does this code do? All right, so playwright.chromium. I want a Chromium type of browser. All right, so that'll be launch. Then we create a new browser type within there. Oh, so these are the options where it's headless and it's set channel Chrome and search player to use Chrome rather than default Chromium. Okay, so I guess if I wanted Edge, I would put in Edge. Right, convert this to use Edge. I don't worry too much about spelling when I'm working with the chat. It figures it out. All right, so I don't write Edge, I write MS Edge. Let's try that. So I'm just going to write Chrome to remind me what it was, and let's try it on Edge. It's interesting that you have to choose the type of browser, but I guess that's a technical reason because the browsers start in different ways. So you have to know Edge is a Chromium browser, but I guess you only have to put that in one or two places to figure it out. I wonder, so can ChatGPT visit the web and create a test around this? Let's have a look. So it could only do this prompt if it has access to the web. So using the page at particular page, use Playwright Java with JUnit to click the 1 button, then the plus button, then the 2 button, then equal, and assert that the value shown in the calculator total is 3. So calculator test, create Chrome, tear down, open page, click button 1, button plus, button 02, button equals, calculation. Let's give it a shot. So all I need to copy here is the test method, because we've already got one that opens the page and checks that it's calculator. So let's do open test pages calculator. So test calculator addition, we'll go to the page button 1, assert equals, let's make this JUnit, because we've already brought in the assertions.assert equals. I could bring in that statically, but I tend to write assertions.assert equals anyway, so that's the style that I write. Are these the right locators? I don't know. Let's run the test and find out. Oh, so it did 1, 2, 3. It's left the browser open, which after each context.close. Okay, not sure why I didn't close the page, but it did last time. Oh, so it's the assertion. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So it timed out on the final assertion, waiting for locator calculation. Okay, so it made that up, but it managed to get these correctly. So let's have a quick look in the DOM, see what we've got here. So we've got button 1, button 2, button 3. I don't know if it's gone to the web and found this out, or whether it just made it up. I imagine it must have searched the web to find out those locators. So what have we got here? So this is calculated display, and we've used calculation. So if I just copy calculated display here and put it in for calculation, then this test should work. So it's done a result.trim there when it's pulled out the results from the text content, and expected 3 but was empty. Okay, so I think that text content is not the right way to get that information out. So in the calculator, I've got, so this is me using normal Chrome. And in normal Chrome, I've got AI assistance. So I'm going to try and use that. So I will inspect this field. And then I'm going to ask it, how do I use Playwright Java to get value from this field? See what it says. Cannot provide Playwright Java code assistance. Okay, so I can't use AI assistance in here to help me write Playwright. Let's see whether I can go back to Chat GPT. And I'll copy this. Copy element. So how do I use Playwright Java to get the value from this input element? And so this is saying what I need is the input value, not text content. Okay. So it must be following the context and knows it's told it to get the text content before. Okay, so there's more information here. You can also use get attribute value. All right, so which one will we use? So let's try the input value first. If I just put that in here, string, to make this better, string.result. I don't need to print it. And let's see if that works. What I'm learning now is we create a Playwright session. Then we launch a Chromium browser with these configurations, which is not headless and using Chrome, not Chromium. And I've seen that I could set that to Edge and it would run Edge. Then we use the page object to navigate to a particular place. Then it will wait until it loads. Then we click the various buttons. Then we get the input value from the locator. So it wasn't a timing issue. It was the locator itself and the way that we were getting the value back. So now we've got the input value from this and it works. All right. So I could then create more tests on this to double check that it adds everything. But what I want to do is, let's see if we can get Chat to create a page object. So I'm just going to ask it, using Java Playwright, create a page object for the calculator page at URL. Let's see what it gives me. There's a simple Java page object for the calculator page. I don't really want that. Okay, well, let's take this entire text. We've got the calculator page. In here in the example, new Java class page. I can refactor everything later. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the convenience method. Okay, so it really wants to be put in pages. Let me get rid of the package that was there. That's fine. So it's trying to create a structure. So let's do that. So now we've got a example pages, calculator page, playwright.test. I don't really like this example because I don't own example.com. I would refactor that. I'll do that at the end because Chat GPT is going to continue to put everything in example.com. But that's an easy refactoring. See, there's things when I'm coding that I don't really need to use AI for because I've got it built into the IDE. So I'll do that later. So now we've got the case where we've got button 1, button 2. We don't have button 3. So what was in our test? Button 1 plus button 2. All right. So let's get it to rewrite this test. Let's get the AI to do as much as we can. Rewrite this test to use the page object. Copy that in. Now we need to do the imports. So if I just do Alt-Enter, it will import that. Test calculator addition, I will say with page object. Because the reason that was complaining is because it's the same name as this test calculator addition. Now what we've got is we're going to create a calculator page. We're going to navigate to it. So that's nice because the page object has a navigation. So when we instantiate the page object, it creates the locators. These obviously aren't found on the page until we need them, so we can create them in advance. It's using the CSS locators and it's using the ID, so that's fine. I might be tempted on some applications to write button #button101, but because it's an ID, it's unique on the page, so that's fine. We've got this. In some test frameworks, I would be tempted to pull this out so that I could run it locally or on Docker, but it doesn't matter at the moment. I can easily refactor that myself. So click 1 is button 1 click. All right, so in Playwright, we use a locator and we click on it. So we don't use a locator to get the element. We just click using the locator. Okay, that's different. Then display, again, that's the locator, and we just input value. Right, so let's run that. Seems reasonable enough. Okay, so pretty much when I run a test like that, I can't see it, but I'm trusting that it works. So we've got a page object. We can click 1 plus 2. I might be tempted not to click 1, click plus, click 2, but to amend that to say click button and then the value like 1, 2, 4. That would open up different possibilities for me, but we won't do that yet. I've got the basics here for a test project using Playwright. It didn't take that long. I'm going to edit the video down. I'm seeing some differences with WebDriver, but this is okay as a start. Using the chat interface, I think if you know how to automate, this is a perfectly fine approach. If you know how to code, you can copy paste this in and use it. It'd be interesting in the comments to know if you don't know how to code at all, does this approach help you, or would you need to use an IDE-based chat? Remember, with anything that I've got here, if I don't understand it, I can simply ask the AI to explain it for me. Normally, what I would be doing is I would refactor this into a page object, but because it was so simple, I'm going to say, expand the page object to cover all buttons on the page. Let's see what it does for that. So I think it is actually heading off to the website. It doesn't seem to have picked in the memory ones there. So we got plus, minus, multiply, divide, and equals. We've got a clear, but I don't think it's reading it. I think it's making this up. So that's interesting. So now, is it listening to what I said? Because it looks like it's created a hash. Yeah, it's created a map there, which means that I could then navigate to press and then the string, which is what I said. It's been listening to what I'm saying. So then this is easy enough for me to expand. So I really want that to be C, because that should be CE. All right, let's put that in, because I quite like that approach. So it will completely invalidate this test, but that's fine. We're not going to lose anything just by going straight over here. So now it's press, and we give it a string. The good thing about this is I can start now doing data-driven testing with this. So we've got press 1, press 2. So let me just not talk, because then I'm not concentrating properly. So now in theory, I could pass in an array of buttons and a result, and then we would be able to create a data-driven test. that uses this. Let's just first of all check that this continues to work. Now let's get the chat to create a JUnit data-driven test. I'm going to ask it to create a JUnit data-driven test which accepts an array of strings, which are the button keys, and a result. The test should press each of the supplied buttons and check that the calculated display is the supplied result. Let's see if that works. Nice one. All right, so thank you for approving of my approach. So it's created an entirely new class for this, which is fine. That makes it easy to paste in. And we've got a data provider, which is all right, so arguments, first of which is a string array, and the second is a string. Well, it's created some examples for me. How nice of it. So we've got coverage of plus, times, minus, and divide. All right, let's copy that into an entirely new class. But let's create the class first. New class called calculator data-driven test. Create a class. And we'll copy in all of this. And the actual test says, given an array of keys and an expected result, for each key, press it in the calculator, then check the display is what we expect. All right. Okay, so the hard thing is it goes so fast so you can't actually see it. But I'm trusting at the moment that it's checking the results. So now what I can do is I could expand this out in terms of adding more data in there. I know that the calculator page doesn't have full coverage yet because this C doesn't exist. Let's see, is C button clear? Let's inspect this. So button all clear, button clear entry. So button clear doesn't actually exist. So it's created. So I'm still not sure whether it's accessing the page or whether it's just making this up based on what it thinks a calculator is. Because if it's accessing the page, it's getting things wrong. If it's making it up, then it means that I did quite a good job creating IDs that were associated with a calculator. But it's interesting that it doesn't fully work. But again, what we've got here is the concept that I'm augmenting my programming rather than trying to get the AI to completely replace it. I'm using the AI to help me. So it's not completely beginner programming, or it's not coding without knowing what I'm doing. I know Java, I know how to automate, I know how page objects work. I can spot the differences and the gaps. So I'm using this to speed up my process rather than replace it. And it's quite useful. I don't know whether it would have taken me as long to do this if I was just reading the documentation. Probably about the same. But certainly it would have taken me a little bit longer to create that data-driven test because I've had to remind myself how data-driven tests work in JUnit, and I've had to look up the documentation. Having the chat interface create that was quite useful. It didn't create it completely correct, but it created it well enough that I can build on quite easily. So I will add all these other buttons later if I need to. So I think that's a fairly good start, actually. The calculator is not a hard application to automate. I think there's a way of having Playwright record the results. So let's ask chat. So can Playwright record the results of the test, capturing screenshots as it goes? So I could choose to create a screenshot. Let's not do that. I could choose to create a screenshot after each test. There's lifecycle hooks to capture screenshot automatically if a test fails. Video recording. All right, let's try that. That seems interesting. So in my code, I've got the browser context. So this is when we create a new browser context, set it to record. All right, let's try that. I don't know what this is going to do. So that's going to store it in the current directory, probably at this level. Let's just run it. What the heck? All right, so we've got our videos folder. That's WebM. Hopefully we've got a tool that will open that. In fact, let's just try and double click it in IntelliJ, see what happens. Let's do that. Okay, so it's so fast that I can't see what it's doing. Let me try and VLC, see what happens. Okay, so a video for this is not as helpful. Can we control the speed that Playwright runs at? All right, so we can set the slow-mo on browser launch. Let's do that. There's not that many actions in the test, to be honest, in the browser launch. So let's make this 300 milliseconds. Let me try and run this again. Now, the interesting thing is, these are not sensible names. They're GUIDs, so they're unique, but I can't really look at them and go, okay, that is for that test, that is for the next test. But this is fine for the moment. So in that folder, what is new? So now it's 1 second length. 824. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I might even want to make that a little bit slower still. So let's make it 1 whole second, and then I'll be able to see it. But this is interesting that Playwright has that built in to capture videos. Could be useful during debugging. It's not an MP4 file, so it's much smaller because it's the WebM format. But now I can see 7 times 8, 56. 9 minus 5, 4. I didn't see the equals. So this isn't the most visual of applications. So there might be a way of highlighting key presses. I wonder, I would probably have to amend the DOM. I can't imagine Playwright has something like that. Let's just double check. So I've asked it, can Playwright highlight button clicks when recording a video? No, but we can inject CSS. All right, so just like WebDriver, we can inject scripts in there. So this creates a highlight button function, which immediately before clicking, we evaluate and use the selector to highlight button selector. All right, so we can do that because we have a page object. So let's try this. So in the page setup, that was the page setup. Let's inject a script into that page. In the, it says instruction to wrap it in the page object. So there we're just doing press, thank you. So I was going to copy in the code, but it's telling me what to do in the page object. So in the calculator page. Now this does mean that I would have to inject that in the page each time. So really I should put that in the page object. All right, so previously we did just copy the whole press. So we get the button if it's null, unsupported button, evaluate button.selector. Okay, so it's generated code that doesn't work. Nice. Okay, let's just ask chat. The selector is not present in locator. How do we get the actual CSS locator value? Oh, yes. Well, so in Java, that method doesn't exist. Excellent. All right, so instead of trying to extract it, locate it. So I already have it in here. So buttons.getKey is a locator. So I haven't actually stored it as a separate thing. So I would have to create a lot more code to do that. Okay, let's not bother then. Alternative, highlight via the locator directly. So what this is saying is, rather than injecting a script at the start, because there's no need for that, what this is doing is, just before we click it, evaluate some code. All right, so let's do that. So that means in the test, I don't need to add the script. I think that was the only change we made here. Yep. So in the page, when we press, see, this is where I should have been put under version control immediately, but let's use the local history. Let's go back to that. All right, so now immediately before we click, we'll evaluate. We still haven't got the button. And let me Alt-Enter to create that. So that was a locator, then button. So what this should do is immediately before we click the button, we will run some JavaScript that sets the border to be solid red, then a timeout after 300 milliseconds to set it back to normal. So for 300 milliseconds, it will flash red. That should be good enough for our purpose. Let me run the test again. And that's a little bit cleaner because whenever I'm using that page object, that will now happen. Now what I could do is create the page object with a flag to say highlight the buttons before we click them. I'm not seeing any change there, to be honest. And I'm seeing errors. Okay. So I messed up. Not necessarily me, actually. It's failing on the evaluate. Okay, so even though the Chat GPT has said we can pass it in, this method is not letting us. Element handle instances. Okay, so I can get an element handle from the button. Let's try that. Let me run the test again. Now, I don't know if that was going to be obvious to everyone. I looked through this, it told me that the argument was not supported, so I assume that a locator is not supported. Then when I looked at the help for that method, I'm seeing that it's talking about an element handle. So then I went, can I get an element handle from the button? So let's try run this test now. I'm beginning to wish that I hadn't asked this question. Oh, there we go. So now I can see when it's clicking, what it's clicking on. That's useful for the video aspect. It's not necessary for normal testing. So I can imagine this being useful if test is failing, I put it into slow-mo mode. I want to see what it's actually doing so I can see the changes there. And now hopefully these videos are usable as actual videos of the test. So this would be a new one and it's 5 seconds. Let's run it. Great. So that's much better. That's much more usable. It didn't take long to get there. That's quite a nice feature out of Playwright. Okay, so I'm going to leave this there because I've demonstrated to myself that the chat system, certainly Chat GPT currently, knows enough about Playwright to help me. It was giving me some misinformation because it's clearly using a lot of the JavaScript information. Most of the time when people are using Playwright, the examples are TypeScript and JavaScript. So it was telling me that some methods exist which don't exist in the Java version, but clearly do exist in the TypeScript version. But we overcame that by asking a few more questions. So I'm satisfied that Chat could help me here. I've got something that is good enough to start with. We've got a page object, which makes the test a little bit cleaner. And we've got a data-driven test to allow us to explore a single path. And that's pretty much what you would call, I guess, a happy path, where given a set of buttons, check that the result is what we expect. And that test can be expanded with the data there to increase the coverage scope. So that's quite a good start in a short period of time. Thanks very much for tuning in.